Here is how to properly use every hero in BTD6. We'll start with Rosalia, the newest hero in the game. She comes in at $945 in chimps and is well worth the price. She works great with helis and aces, deals solid damage, and is useful on most maps. But this is how we can get the most out of her. Because we can't start with Rosalia, we'll need some starting towers to get us through the first few rounds. Whatever you pick doesn't really matter, but in the teens we'll get her down. The workshop we place for her is massive and takes up a lot of space, but you don't have to use a valuable spot for her. This workshop has a ton of range and you can move Rosalia anywhere inside it. So I like to put the workshop a little off to the side so it's easy to buff, but is still close enough to give Rosalia plenty of spots to sit. This saves room right next to the track for other towers and gives us more flexibility with where we'll be placing heli pilots and aces in the future. Getting her down in the teens is pretty nice as her laser attack deals 3 damage and has 3 pierce, which is super helpful against the early yellows and pinks that come in this stage. But pretty soon you'll unlock her level 2 and 3 abilities. At level 2, you can switch her weapon between the laser and a grenade launcher. In general, the laser does more single target damage and the grenade launcher has more pierce. I typically leave her on laser mode for the early game unless I need help with leads or if a big rush is coming like on round 36. But even here, you don't really have to worry about it. At level 3, she unlocks her scatter missile ability, which lets her workshop fire global missiles that deal great damage and stun balloons for a short time. This has a small charge up period, so you need to use it slightly in advance, but it'll take care of basically every rush for you. From here, every level is pretty nice, but Rosalia is not the fastest leveler. She has a 1.425 times multiplier on the XP needed to level up, so she'll hit levels like 10 and 15 much later than heroes like Quincy or Obyn. And in a normal game, she won't hit level 20 by round 100. Anyway, at level 4, Rosalia gets a very important upgrade. Every 10th shot, she fires an enhanced attack from her current weapon. For the laser, this is a plasma bolt that has extra damage and pierce, but more importantly, can knock back blimps. And her enhanced grenade launcher fires 3 grenades instead of 1, making its cleanup even better. Then, at level 6, she makes aces and helis 10% cheaper if they're placed inside the range of her workshop. And this goes for their upgrades too, not just the base cost. This doesn't seem like much, but when you're spending 40 to 80 grand on these towers, it adds up quickly. Now, this discount doesn't matter much with the base towers or early upgrades, so you don't have to wait on Rosalia to hit level 6 before buying a heli or ace. If you're struggling to defend, you can place them down a couple rounds early as you'll only miss out on saving a few $100s. It really comes into play with the tier 4s and 5s. The nice thing is, level 6 usually lines up with when you'd place these guys down or when you'd start to upgrade them, so it's not like you'll be waiting forever. In the late 30s, she'll hit level 7 where her utility skyrockets. Here, you'll be able to move her anywhere inside the workshop's range, even if it's on an obstacle or even the track, opening up a world of possibilities of great spots for her to defend from. And this is why she's so useful on so many maps. When she learns how to use her jetpack, she can work around anything. But this also unlocks her flight boost ability, which lets her fly around the map globally and use both of her weapons for 20 seconds. If you're facing a hard round, use this ability and watch her destroy the balloons. And you can probably see why Rosalia is so good at beating round 40. Just activate her flight boost to make her shoot the Moab from the start. The plasma bolt will knock it back, and once the Moab's down to about half health, use scatter missile. This will lock onto the Moab and the missiles will hit it as it breaks open. This will stun the ceramics inside, making for a very easy round. But now we get to fully use her discount and work towards a tier 5 heli or ace. The main 3 are the Apache Prime, Sky Shredder, and Comanche Commander. Now, it's never a bad idea to get a mid-game carry first, but unless you're on an expert map, you don't really have to. The Apache Prime and ComCom have solid tier 4 upgrades that can hold off the balloons long enough to afford their tier 5, especially since they're 10% cheaper with Rosalia. This means you can get a ComCom in the late 60s or an Apache Prime in the late 70s. Now, I've been playing this game for a long time, and I'm not kidding when I say a round 69 Comanche Commander is one of the best towers I've ever seen. The only time balloons got on screen is when my helis were flying across the map at the start of rounds because I was playing on Bazaar. I mean, just look at round 76. That was incredible. Anyway, if you do want to get a carry to help save up, you can get something like a Prince of Darkness. Cheap, destroys the rounds, and is helpful for the rest of the game. Then, the money you save on the ace or heli can be spent on support monkeys for the last few rounds. But if you're on an easier map, like Water Park, you can do what I did and get a Spectre for the mid game. I needed a little something to get to a Sky Shredder, and this way we got to use the discount even more. Definitely not optimal, but it made for an easy save up and a fun late game. During this time, you don't have to do much, but there are a few tricks that'll make this save up easier on your monkeys. The first is use Scatter Missile on any big rush of ceramics. At level 14, this does do decent damage to blimps, but the stun on ceramics is too nice to pass up. The second is that you can micro Rosalia's weapon. For the most part, you can leave her on laser mode, as its single target damage and insane knockback on every type of blimp make this attack incredibly useful. But you can switch to grenades if you have a ton of ceramics heading your way, or if you want to delay the laser's charge shot until a big group of Moabs appears. And the third tip is to use Flight Boost on any hard round to make Rosalia global and use both weapons. And finally, we have her level 10 ability, Kinetic Charge. This makes Rosalia's workshop spit out a bomb that attaches to blimp. This will blow up after 10 seconds and deal anywhere from 1500 to 6000 damage. You increase this number by damaging the blimp the bomb is attached to, and however much damage your monkeys do in this time is added to the bomb's explosion. The nice thing is that your monkeys attack automatically, so you don't really have to think about it. Just use Kinetic Charge anytime there are a bunch of blimps or if there are a few ZOMGs. The only downside is that this explosion doesn't bleed through blimp layers, so you can't go from BFBs down to ceramics. It would only break them down to Moabs even if it did way more damage than they had health. This still adds a ton of single target damage though, which is useful for the 90s and round 100. But using these abilities will let you get your tier 5 ace or heli much faster than usual, and you can spend the rest of your money on support. I mean, you can get a MIB, Relentless Glue, and even an Overclock before round 90, which will set you up great for the DDTs and massive rushes of blimp. In my Apache Prime run, I had all this by round 86, and I didn't need to buy anything else to win, letting us pop the bad with over $58,000 left over, meaning you can pick up a whole other tower if you want to. I mean, I got a Glaive Lord with my ComCom and still had enough for a Super Glue if we wanted it. Next up, we have Quincy, who is the cheapest hero in the game, coming in at only $585 in chimps, meaning you can get him down right away, and his early game is strong enough to handle the first few rounds on plenty of maps, even some tougher ones like Infernal and Muddy Puddle. Additionally, he's tied for the fastest level up speed in the game, so not only can we get him down at the start, but he also hits important levels early on, like the ability to see camo balloons before round 24 and easily hitting level 20 by round 100. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Quincy is a general damage dealing hero that works well with any tower that doesn't need a specific hero. He does solid damage at all stages in the game and is very easy to use. To get the most out of him, we want to place him right away. If you're on a map where you can't afford to place him at the start or in the first couple rounds, you're probably better off using a different hero. If you can get him down right away though, he makes it very easy to get your other starting monkey. He has solid popping power, and his level 3 rapid shot lets him clear just about any round in the early game, letting you make those early save ups. During this time, you should be placing whatever monkeys you want your late game strategy to be built around. This could be a Glaive Lord, Bez, Super Monkey, or really anything that isn't reliant on a different hero to be good. On top of rapid shot making this easy, we also have Quincy's built-in camo detection that he gets at level 5. This makes the round 24 camo green irrelevant, and when combined with rapid shot, he can handle every camo through the 30s, letting you spend your money elsewhere. But around the time that leads come, you should get an alchemist next to Quincy and upgrade it to a berserker brew. This will help pop the leads and also time up with Quincy hitting level 6. Here, he starts shooting 2 arrows instead of 1, making the alchemist buff twice as good, and Quincy can take on way more balloons at a time. But from here, every level makes Quincy better and better. At level 7, he starts shooting exploding arrows every 3rd shot, which helps with crowd control, and at level 8 he gets extra damage to Moab class balloons. On intermediate and harder maps, Quincy will hit level 8 by the time you face your first Moab in round 40, while on beginners, he'll have this extra damage by the 50s. Either way, combine this extra damage with rapid shot and watch Quincy tear apart that Moab layer and reveal the ceramics underneath. He won't be able to solo those, but with just a little help you'll be fine. Then we'll buff Quincy and your other monkeys with a village and upgrade the alchemist to a 4-2-0 stronger stim. Here is when Quincy's damage against Moabs becomes significant as more and more of them start spawning. And while Quincy is doing work, keep building towards your tier 5 tower. Between Quincy and this other monkey, you should be able to handle the rounds just fine. This is also about the time that he unlocks his level 10 ability, Storm of Arrows. It's amazing for getting you out of a jam and is best used against huge rushes of ceramic. My favorite rounds to use this on are round 60 once we break open the Moabs, or the waves of ceramics on round 76 and 78. But that brings us to the 80s, where Quincy's weakness finally comes out: super ceramics. He's great at breaking open blimps, but these guys tend to get through. Luckily, you should be getting your tier 5 monkey around this time, so make sure it can handle them. The towers we listed before will work just fine, or we can back them up with a Bloon Solver or Prince of Darkness. Then, for the 90s, you want to pick up a Mib or Glue Storm so that Quincy can damage the DDT. Without these buffs, he can't help at all, but with them, he can make rounds like 95 and 99 much easier. And one big trick is when to use Storm of Arrows in the 90s. You may be tempted to use it at the start of rounds like 96 and 98, as that's when all the blimps are on screen and grouped together, but I actually recommend something else. Let your towers and Quincy's main attack deal with the tough outer layers of the blimps, and once you get them down to just a ton of blue Moabs, use the Storm of Arrows ability and watch it take them from blimps to nothing just like that. This takes advantage of the ability's Infinite Pierce, Quincy's great Moab class damage, and helps him overcome his main weakness of Super Ceramics. But other than that, you don't need to do anything special. Whatever towers you pick up have to be able to beat the 90s in round 100, as Quincy doesn't even come close to soloing them. But his cheap price tag, early and mid-game damage, and tower flexibility allow for some fun and unique strategies. Moving on, we have Obyn Greenfoot. He costs $700, so just out of our starting budget. This means we'll start the game off with whatever monkeys are needed to beat the first few rounds, and we'll place Obyn ASAP. His early game is great as he deals 2 damage and has seeking attacks, making the next several rounds after placing him easy. And just like Quincy, he's tied for the fastest leveler in the game, needing just the normal amount of XP to level up. This lets him hit level 3 quickly, where he unlocks his Brambles ability, which lets him place a Bush of Thorns on the track that damage any Bloons that touch it, similar to a Spike Pile. This gives a nice boost of damage, can pop Camo Bloons, and they last up to 2 minutes, meaning you can stockpile them if your monkeys are popping the Bloons before they get to the Brambles, adding a nice safety net for the next tough round. But after getting Obyn down, we have a ton of flexibility. Really, we'll just get through the first 25 rounds however possible. On Ravine, I used a slew of Dart Monkeys and a Wizard, but on easier maps, I like to follow Obyn with a Bloon Jitsu and Berserker Brew. This way, we can rely on an Elk buffed Ninja for the early and mid game, and we can back him up with a Brambles for any hard round. And with that, we'll work our way to the late 30s, where you'll want to pick up a 302 Druid of the Storm. This guy works great with Obyn as he receives the Druid buffs, and the improved tornadoes make the mid game much easier, especially round 40, where we have a special trick. Brambles pairs great with an Alchemist as the damage and pierce buffs affect it similar to Spike Factories. An Elk buffed level 7 Brambles can deal up to 309 damage instead of the usual 100, which will shred the outer layer of the Moab, only leaving the ceramics inside to deal with. And the Druid of the Storm will push them back, giving you plenty of time to pop them. And we won't have to worry about any more Moabs until the 50s. One thing to note is Obyn's damage in the late game is pretty weak, so dedicating an Alchemist to him can be a waste if you're tight on cash, meaning he's a great hero to recycle an Alchemist on. This just means you put the Elk in a spot where he can buff Obyn in the mid game, but later on you'll put your main damage dealer right next to the Alchemist, stealing the potion priority from Obyn. Not something you have to do, but it's always fun to plan ahead with things like this. Right around this time, Obyn will hit level 8 and give every Druid in his range camo detection. Why Obyn can point out camos without being able to see them himself, I don't know, but this makes the 40s much easier and is where we'll commit to a strategy. We can either get a bunch of Druids and eventually get an Avatar of Wrath or Spirit of the Forest, or you can use Obyn and a Ball Lightning to save up a ton of money in the mid game and buy a big damage dealer. Both work great, and it's completely up to you. If you're going full Druids, get 5 or 6 of them down and slowly upgrade them to Populus, buff them with a couple Berserker Brews, and upgrade the Tornado to a Ball Lightning. This will give you a ton of popping power and let you save up for your tier 5 Druid. If you want to save up for a different monkey, the plan is simple. Get a mid-game carry like an Arcane Spike, Bads, or Aircraft Carrier, and upgrade the Druid of the Storm to a Ball Lightning. Between these guys' damage and the Druid stalls, you won't have any issues. Just go straight for your monkey of choice. I was able to save up for a Moab Domination on Ravine, so really just about any tower is on the table. During this time, Obyn will hit level 10 and unlock his Wall of Trees ability. In every game mode but Chimps and Deflation, put these trees as far forward as possible, as it'll make you quite a bit of extra cash anytime they burst. These do not make any extra money in Chimps though, so we'll want to put them near the end of the track to keep the Bloons from leaking. After getting your expensive monkey, Obyn has kind of run his course. He doesn't do much damage in the late game. Instead, he's mostly there for his magic monkey buffs, slowing totems, and Wall of Trees. At this point, the totems slow Bloons by 60% and blimps by 30%, so it's a very nice slow, and his Wall of Trees are big enough now to eat several DDTs, making the 90s much easier. Just make sure to back up your monkeys with the usual support to beat the late game. This means picking up a Relentless Glue, maybe getting a Mib if you need need some more popping power for DDTs, upgrading your alchemist to stronger stims, and getting a first strike or spike storms for round 100. And with these, you should easily beat your game of chimps. Outside of this mode though, Obyn has one more important buff. He gives middle path druids extra range and income, which is great when you're using jungle's bounty to farm. While not the best way to make money, Obyn's buff will let you fit more farms inside their range and get more out of each ability. This way, you can make a solid income while defending in game modes like Impoppable. Shifting gears, we have Sauda. Known for her great damage, she's one of the easiest heroes to use. The only thing is she has very little range, making her borderline unusable on several maps. When she can reach the track though, she's great, especially if placed in a loop or on a bend. She comes in at only $650 on chimps, meaning you can start a game with her, and on many maps, she's strong enough to beat the first few rounds for you. This isn't always the case though, so just get her down as early as you can. Her great damage will let you save a ton of money early on, as you'll be able to skip several monkeys in these low levels with how much damage she is doing. I mean, even on expert maps like Quad and Ravine, you can put her down and she'll mostly handle a lane or two, letting you spend more money on the other track. And on easier maps, this just means you only need to back her up a little before saving up for a bigger tower. She can see camos and pop every type of bloon except leads, but this is where her level 3 ability Sword Leap comes into play. It lets Sauda leap at the bloons anywhere on screen and slam her swords into them. This slam does a ton of initial damage and leaves swords in the track where she landed, damaging any bloons that pass over them. This is amazing for any large rush as it one-shots ceramics and it does a ton of extra damage to blimps. Just make sure to use it a couple seconds in advance as it takes Sauda a little bit to leap to the bloon. As for what monkeys you should get in the early game, it's up to you. In the late game, we'll pair her with one or two big damage dealers like a Bez or Meg, so feel free to start those now. What you should get though is a Berserker Brew next to her. She works great with an alchemist as it'll make her that much more deadly. But this will bring us to round 40 where Sword Leap makes it pretty easy. Just have Sauda and your other monkeys pop the outer layer of the Moab and use Sword Leap right as the layer is breaking. This will one-shot the ceramics inside, making for an easy round and letting you go right back to working on your late game defense. Now, most of Sauda's levels are strong, making her much better, but she does level up slower than the base heroes, needing 1.425 times more experience than Quincy or Obyn. She'll still get up there in levels, just not as fast. Two important levels to note are 7 and 11. Here, she gets tons of extra damage to stunned and slowed bloons, and these stack, so the perfect monkey to pair her with is a 024 glue gunner, as a relentless glue slows and stuns every type of bloon except bads, and it's an amazing support through the entire game. One we would pick up even without this extra damage. And if you want to make this even more reliable, get a Dragon's Breath next to her, as its damage over time flames also trigger her extra damage. Between this, your monkeys in progress, and Sauda's abilities, you should easily be able to make it to a tier 5 tower in the late 70s. No bloon rush should be a problem, especially after she unlocks her level 10 ability. Sword Charge lets her run along the track, damaging any bloon she hits, and she creates copies of herself on maps with multiple exits. It deals 30 damage to up to 400 bloons with each copy, making it one heck of a cleanup option. And it gets better at levels 14 and 16 as she'll charge through the map twice and the damage goes from 30 to 60. Even in the late 90s, it's a great way to clear the screen. But after picking up your big damage dealers, there isn't much else to do with Sauda. She doesn't buff anything, just provides a ton of damage. Sword Leap will wreak havoc, especially if used on glued or harmed bloons, and her main attack is nothing to laugh at, as it even does well versus DDTs. If given a couple Moab presses, she can take out an impressive number of blimps even on harder maps. But all we need to do is back our monkeys up with whatever support they need and get the win. Sailing onward, we have Brickell. Coming in at $970, she's one of the most expensive heroes in the game, but is well worth the price. If you're on a map with a decent amount of water, you can get S tier power out of her. She has huge burst damage with her abilities, pairs well with every water monkey, and will get you some very easy wins. The only things to be aware of are her need for water and that she levels up pretty slow, tied with Sauda's 1.425 times XP multiplier. But let's get into how to use her. Because she can only be placed in the water, we'll try to start with a Dart Monkey and Submarine or Buccaneer. These are both excellent starts, and the Sub or Buck will work great with Brickell later on. If you need, you can upgrade the Sub to an Airburst Darts or the Buck to have Grape Shot, but place Brickell down as soon as you can. Make sure to put her down next to future water monkeys as she buffs those close to her. And what I like to do is have her slightly forward and set her to strong. This way, we can make use of her pistol, which does a surprising amount of damage at all stages of the game. At level 1, it already deals +3 damage, making the early yellow and pink balloons very easy. But from here, we can go just about any direction. Subs, bucks, and mermonkeys all work great and have very strong synergies. But in general, I like to take on the early rounds with Brickell and a 220 Buccaneer or a 202 Submarine. I pop the early camo green on round 24 with something simple like a 002 Dart Monkey, and I try to get a submersion support in time for round 33. That way, we don't have to worry about camos for the rest of the run, and we can go back to our damage dealer. And during this time, we can use Brickell's level 3 ability, Naval Tactics, to pop any tough round. This gives every water-based monkey in our range double attack speed for a short time, and when paired with a sub or Buccaneer, it destroys the round. And now, we have so many options, and it really comes down to what strategy you want to use. If you're planning on running a sub army, start placing more submarines or upgrade one of them to an APD for round 40. If you're going to use boats or mermonkeys though, I recommend upgrading our buck to a 320 destroyer first, as it will carry the early and mid game, especially when we buff it with a berserker brew. This, combined with naval tactics, will smoke round 40 and let you start saving money. And if you are ever struggling with leads, know that at level 5, naval tactics gives affected monkeys lead popping power. This is actually super useful for DDTs later on, but more on that later. In the mid game, we'll get down our main damage dealers for the rest of the run. This can be a submarine commander, pirate lord, carrier flagship, lord of the abyss, or even a bunch of destroyers. All of these work great, and at level 8, Brickell grants +1 pierce to every water monkey in her radius, making all of these monkeys much better. And at level 10, she unlocks an amazing ability, Mega Mine. This lets us place a mine anywhere in the water that'll explode when a Moab class balloon passes through its range. This will do 4,000 damage to up to 100 balloons and stun any balloon that lives for 5 seconds, making it a great way to take out blimps. And you can have more than one of them down at a time, so it's super beneficial to stall the rounds, as this will let you place more megamines than if you rush through them. Some easy ways to buy time are with a main Moab set to last, microing a Moab shove, or getting a few Moab maulers. Purposely stalling the rounds to buy time for more mines is called mine stacking, and is how players can beat custom maps harder than bloody puddles with Brickell. Having a few megamines down can pop all the blimps on even the hardest rounds. Just make sure you have plenty of cleanup to handle all the ceramics inside after popping the blimp. Some easy ways to do this are to work in a Glaive Lord or Bloon Solver to your defenses, or you can add a snowstorm to freeze all the ceramics after you bust the blimps open. And if you want to place even more mines, you can get a reactor near Brickell. I like to do this when she's already inside the range of our submersion support, as it then gets to act as a decamoer and cooldown shortener. We can take this a step farther and run an energizer strategy with her. If we go this route, it'll be our first tier 5 of the fight, as we'll get it right after our destroyer or aircraft carrier. But it works great with Brickell, as it cuts her cooldowns in half and lets her hit level 20 in the 90s. This gives a massive boost of damage to her mines, making mine stacking even better, and with the reduced cooldowns, we can have nearly a 50% uptime on naval tactics. But it comes at the cost of losing a damage dealer in the late game. Speaking of which, we can use her abilities to skip a MIB, because naval tactics gives everything lead popping power, so you can use it on every DDT round to counter these speedy blimps. And on round 95, you just need a Megamind to clear any that are still around after tactics wears off. Now, unless you're going for a least cost record, you'll have the money for a MIB or Glue Storm, but it's good to know that neither are required when using Brickell, especially since we won't be getting a radar scanner most of the time, as our submersion support will be our camo detection. Because of this, the village I usually make with Brickell is a 302 for the nice top path buffs and bottom path discounts, and just like any other hero, we'll end the run with whatever support monkeys we need. Hovering over to the next hero, we have Etienne. He comes in at $920, so slightly cheaper than Brickell. Unlike her though, he levels up just as fast as the base heroes, so he'll hit level 20 in just about every game of Chimps, which is nice, as most of his power comes from his abilities. Like usual, we'll get him down as early as possible, which should be in the teens. Unfortunately, he doesn't help out much here, as he has a very weak early game. He can be nice because he has a ton of range, ignores obstacles, and gives nearby towers extra range, letting him be useful on most maps, but his popping power is very low. Once he hits level 3, it gets a bit better, as his ability lets him launch 4 temporary drones for 18.5 seconds, and it's actually pretty good at popping some of the early rushes, and every level he gains adds 0.5 seconds to its duration. The other nice thing he does is provide camo popping power. At level 5, he gets camo detection, making rounds like 24 a breeze, and unless you're playing on a really tough map, his drone swarm can even carry you through the camo waves in the 30s, just pop it on rounds 36 and 37. I usually grab a cheap camo backup like a triple dart or ninja just to be safe, but honestly, you might not need it. But that's really all Etienne does in the early game. Even if you wanted to buff him, it's kind of tough. You can't even increase his popping power with an alchemist, as they won't target him with their potion. Luckily, he gets a bit better in the mid game. At level 8, he gives every monkey camo detection, coming just in time for the 40s. This is nice, as you don't have to worry about camos ever again, but it's not as good as it seems since there are so many cheap camo detecting options these days. I mean, you can get a submergent support, signal flare, or radar scanner just to name a few, and they only cost a couple $1,000s. Still, it's nice to not have to get any of these towers. But in the 50s, Etienne hits his stride. Here, he'll hit level 10 and unlock his UCAV ability. This is most of the reason why you'd use Etienne as your hero, as it gives him great burst damage. If there's a rush you're afraid of, like 63, 76, or 78, just use his UCAV and you'll be fine. I do have a couple tips for these rounds though. On round 63, his UCAV only lasts long enough to help with 2 of the 3 rushes, so I like to use it on the 2nd and 3rd. Round 76 happens so fast that I like to use his UCAV at the end of 75 to help with the final bit of Moabs and ceramics, and it'll last long enough to pop round 76. And round 78, you need to pop this ability at the very start of the round. This one will help you with the first rush of ceramics and will come off cooldown just in time for the second one, so be mashing that button to get it up in the air in time for the second wave of ceramics. But because UCAV helps out so much with large rushes, it's very easy to save up a ton of money in the mid game with Etienne. This is the best perk of running him, as you can easily save up for a large tower. Which one you pick is up to you, as none of his combos are OP, so just have fun with it. The more common ones are a Comanche Commander or Dark Champion, but I'm also a fan of pairing him with a Moab Domination or a 5-2-0 Arc Mage. Around this time, Etienne will be hitting level 16, where his range buffs for towers in his radius jumps up to plus 20%, which can be very nice on multi-lane maps. All of these monkeys are fine to pair with Etienne, but there's a clear trend. He works well with towers that can break the outer layers of blimps in the 90s, but struggle against these super ceramics inside. This is because at level 20, Etienne's UCAV gets much better. When activated, its missiles deal 10 damage, have 30 pierce, and can pop every type of balloon. This works wonders for cleaning up super ceramics, so activate it when everything is breaking down to Moabs or smaller. At this time, Etienne also gets a permanent UCAV that's much weaker. This is nice global damage, but prevents you from stalling the round, so monkeys that depend on abilities or something like a permaspike that does better the longer rounds take do not work well with Etienne at all. And finally, we have DDTs. Outside of providing camo detection, Etienne can't help with these until he hits level 20. And even here, you need to activate UCAV to make it able to damage them. Because of this, it's nice to get a MIB or Glue Storm for your defenses. The MIB doesn't fit well though, because Etienne lets you skip a radar scanner, but if you want to run something like a Call to Arms in ComCom, it can work just fine. Up next, we have Gwendolyn, the Pyromaniac. Coming in at $785, she's pretty cheap and easy to get down. Gwen is a general damage and support hero that fits into many strategies. This allows her to combo with tons of monkeys, but she doesn't get that top end power that some other strats have with more specialized heroes. She's more of a jack of all flames, master of none. What's nice though is that she's tied for the fastest level up speed in the game, so she'll hit level 20 in just about every game of Chimp. Combine this with the fact that her early game popping power is pretty lackluster, and you realize that you don't have to rush her at all. Just get her down in the teens. That being said, her level 3 ability, Cocktail of Fire, is an incredibly powerful tool early on, letting her handle any difficult round like 15 or the first rush of 36. Plus, it has a short cooldown, so use it whenever you're in trouble. Just be careful of purple balloons, as just one of them will completely extinguish the cocktail even if she just threw it down. At level 4, Gwen gets heated up, which is her main calling card and the reason why she's so useful. This passive activates every time Gwen shoots 40 times and applies a buff to nearby monkeys. Heated up provides +1 pierce and lead popping power and damages nearby balloons when it goes off. It's pretty weak in the early game, but in the later levels it becomes very strong. Because of this, we'll be putting Gwen next to our main damage dealers, and we want her near the front so she'll always be attacking. In the mid-30s, we'll want to buff her with a Berserker Brew and Jungle Drums. These will increase her attack speed, letting her pop heated up more often. Plus, it'll make her main attack and cocktail much better. If you want to see her do insane amounts of damage, use her level 3 ability when she's affected by the Elk's AMD and Berserker Brew potions. It only counts counts as one attack from them, but it gets the extra damage and pierce for the entire duration. And once Gwen hits level 8 and 9, her popping power goes up by quite a bit as she gets a second projectile and +1 damage, making the Alchemist even more useful. But from here, we need to decide what monkeys to pair with her, and we have a couple options. You can either go with fire monkeys like a Wizard Lord Phoenix or Infernal Ring, as Gwen gives them extra attack speed, or you can pair her with monkeys that need lead popping power and benefit from the extra pierce and damage Heated Up provides. Some towers that come to mind for this are the Tax Zone, Comanche Commander, and Grandmaster Ninja. This brings us to Gwen's level 10 ability, Firestorm. It sets the whole screen on fire, burning every bloon, and grants every monkey on screen the Heated Up buff. So in the mid game, we can use Firestorm to counter tough ceramic rushes like round 76 and 78, and for round 63, you can just cocktail the first wave, Firestorm the second, and cocktail the third as it'll be back off cooldown. Then, in the late game, we'll be using Firestorm to buff our monkeys with Heated Up in times of need. This can come against rounds like 96, where her buff can be the difference between winning and losing, or it can come into play on DDT rounds, because Gwen can easily give your monkeys lead popping power, making it very easy to skip a MIB. This $8,100 upgrade isn't necessary with Gwen, because once she hits level 18, she has the attack speed to always have Heated Up active. As long as she's attacking, she can refresh the buff faster than even a Tax Zone can use it, and it provides an additional +2 damage to leads, making monkeys like the ComCom and Grandmaster Ninja shred DDTs. And if it ever does wear off, you can always use Firestorm to bail you out. If you want to play it safe though, you can pair her with a Glue Storm, as then you have two abilities that give lead popping power and extra damage. And Glue Storm works well with high projectile monkeys that we pair with Gwen. But this, plus a little support, should get you the win. Speaking of firepower, let's talk about someone who takes explosive gameplay to a whole new level. Striker Jones. Coming in at just $755, he's one of the cheaper heroes and is easy to get down early, and thanks to recent buffs, he's actually useful right away. His explosives now deal 2 damage to up to 10 balloons, letting him put a large dent in round 15 and the early 20s. This damage lets him pop pinks down to greens and whites down to yellows, so try to get him down early to maximize his impact. Pretty quickly, he'll hit level 3 and unlock his concussive shell ability. When activated, he fires a homing missile at the strongest balloon on screen, dealing 2 damage and stunning everything caught in the blast. It's decent for early rushes, but it really shines against ceramics and blimps, especially since it gets stronger with levels. Oh, and the cooldown is crazy short, so don't overthink it. Use it whenever you're in trouble. For the rest of the early game, just focus on whatever monkeys can carry you through round 40. Striker will help out a bit once he hits level 7, as his damage jumps up to 4, letting him bring the leads and zebras that come in the late 30s down to greens, which is super useful, especially since he has so much pierce. Normally, I like to start my late game defenses around this time, but the main reason we run Striker is all the buffs he gives to mortars and bomb shooters. And let's be real, those aren't exactly early game powerhouses unless you're on a map like Moon Landing where mortars go crazy. So don't be afraid to get some early game towers like an APD sub or a destroyer, and if you're worried about the Moab, you can grab a 030 Mauler to help with round 40. Then just use a concussive shell on the ceramics inside to make for an easy round. In the 40s, it's finally time to get our main towers. You can choose any tier 5 mortar or bomb shooter and have a good run, so I'll just talk about how to get there. If you're leaning towards mortars, the Signal Flare is a great decamo option since Striker boosts his attack speed and blast radius. And for the mid game, an artillery battery paired with a Moab assassin will handle things nicely. If you want to go a more bomb shooter route though, defending with a Bloon impact and a couple clusters will go a long way and let you save up for 2 discount villages. This will let you spam future bomb shooters for cheap, and these will be performing better than normal since Striker makes black balloons less resistant to explosives and buffs our monkeys attack speed and pierce. Then just back them up with a Moab glue and you'll be able to save up for your tier 5 tower. During this time, Striker will hit level 10 where he learns artillery command. This resets the cooldowns of every bomb shooter and mortar monkey on screen, so Moab assassins, eliminators, artillery batteries, and the pop and ah all benefit from this. In the mid game, artillery command doesn't do much as you won't have many of these abilities, and the cooldown is so long that you can't rely on it too often, but it's nice to break out versus tough rounds. Speaking of which, Striker makes round 63 pretty easy. Concussive shell has a short enough cooldown to be used on all 3 of the ceramic rushes, giving you plenty of time to pop them. Plus, mortars and bombs have tons of pierce, so they handle this round pretty well. This will let you save up for a bomb blitz, Bloon Sin, pop and ah, or the biggest one in the 70s, or you can get a primary expertise and get a ton of Moab assassins, maulers, and recursive clusters inside its radius. And from here, we'll spend the rest of our money either going for another tier 5 or some support. Up to you. But this will bring us to the 90s where Striker gets 2 big levels. When he hits 19, he completely negates the black property, making DDTs much easier, and at level 20, Artillery Command becomes one of the best abilities in the game. Not only does it reset the bomb and mortar cooldowns, but it also doubles their damage and pierce for a short time, letting you crush any round. It still has a long cooldown though, so be careful. I like to use it for round 98, but it can depend on what strat you go. You might need it for round 100 if you don't have much single target damage, but you can get around this by picking up a first strike or spike storms to counter the bad. Shifting gears, we have Captain Churchill, the most expensive hero in the game, coming in at $2,160, so you won't be getting him until the late teens. The normal range is anywhere from rounds 18 to 25, and if you can't get him down by round 28, you're better off choosing a different hero. Because of this, you need a cheap tower that'll let you save up for him early. Two great examples of this are an airburst dart sub or a double shot ninja. When it comes to placing him down, it's important that Churchill gets a nice straight line to get the most out of his high pierce. You can put him at the end of a straight line and set him to last, or put him at the start of a straight line, leave him on first, and have him shoot with the balloons. This is different from most towers in the game, but Churchill has unique projectiles that work well in this scenario. Maps that don't have straight lines don't pair well with Churchill, and a different hero should be used. On top of being super expensive and picky with his placements, Churchill is also the slowest leveler in the game, needing 1.71 times more experience than the base monkeys, meaning he'll only be hitting levels 15 or 16 in most runs. But Churchill provides solid damage at all stages of the game. Early on, his high pierce and machine gun make him very good at taking out normal balloons, and his main attack will handle all the leads. You can use his level 3 ability to clean up any round that's heavy with ceramics or black balloons, as it lets his shells explode 2 more times, pop black balloons, and deal extra damage to ceramics and blimps. And on top of this, he gets camo detection at level 6. You'll still need something to pop the first few camos of the game, but once you're in the late 30s or 40s, he can help out. And here is when you start making money and you can work towards some other damage dealers. And luckily for us, we can pair just about anything with Churchill, as long as they don't need specific buffs from other heroes like druids do with Obyn. But adding Churchill to 1 or 2 general damage dealers will work out great, especially since you can counter most of the tough rounds in the mid game with his ability. For example, you can destroy any ceramic rush like 76 or 78 with armor piercing shells, and his level 10 ability, Moab Barrage, counters blimps. When activated, Churchill launches missiles at the 10 strongest blimps on screen, dealing up to 3,200 damage to each of them, so we can use this to pop tough rounds like 75. And in the late game, Churchill does become stronger, but you'll still want to be using his abilities in tough rounds. After you get your damage dealer or dealers online, we'll need to get Churchill some support for the 90s. 3 things we can get him are an overclock, mib, and relentless glue. The first is a great buff for Churchill because of his low experience gain. He levels up so slowly that he won't hit level 20 in a normal game, meaning overclock will have a 100% uptime on him. The mib is nice because Churchill can't damage DDTs without his abilities, and the normal debuffs don't work because it's the black property that makes them resistant to Churchill, not the lead property. And the relentless glue slows everything down, giving him more time to pop the balloons. But with these and some other DPS towers, you should beat your game of CHIMPS. A different route you can take though is pairing Churchill with an Energizer. This helps him overcome his slow XP gain and can even let him hit level 20 on advanced or expert maps. Just make sure to get it in the mid 60s or 70s. And while you will be down a damage dealer as you have to buy the Energizer, Churchill will be doing a ton of damage from level 17 and up. Just make sure to give him the normal buffs and you'll be good to go. Next up, we have Benjamin. He costs you $1,295, but is different from every other hero in that his main purpose is to make money. He does provide some utility outside of this, so we'll still cover some chimps tips if you're feeling memey, but for the most part, we'll be focusing on other game modes where he really shines. We'll start with everything he brings to the table. At level 1, Ben makes $90 at the end of every round, and this only increases with level. So you'll want to place him down early, as even without monkey knowledge, he pays himself off fast. Shortly after this, he gets 2 more ways of making money. The first is his bank hack, which makes every bank on screen generate 5% more cash per round. This makes them fill up faster as it compounds with their end of round interest. Banks already make a ton of money, and now they'll make even more. The second way is a passive ability called skimming, where he makes you $1 for every balloon that comes on screen. This is a nice bonus, as from rounds 35 to 45, skimming will make you over $800. Aside from printing cash, Ben has several useful abilities for making rounds easier. The first is his level 3 biohack. When activated, the 4 closest monkeys pop an extra layer per attack for 6 seconds, but they can't attack for 2 seconds after this ends, so be careful. It's usually worth the trade-off, but you can put yourself in a pickle if you mess up. Overall, biohack is super nice for early rounds when you need cheap monkeys like a sub or dart to handle tough rounds, or for big rushes later on, like round 63 or 64. At level 4, Ben will start regenerating lives for you at the end of each round. While you won't leak in most games, it's common to lose a few lives early on when saving up for Ben. This is fine, as the extra money he makes from getting him down earlier is well worth it, and this passive will bring you back up to full health in no time. Then, at level 7, Ben will start throwing out Bloon Trojan. These home towards the strongest target and cause affected Bloons to spawn no children when popped and award extra money for that outside layer. Trojan Bloons generate $2 base and $1 additional for each layer skipped. So a Trojan pink Bloon rewards $6 because it gets the base 2, plus $4 as it skips the yellow, green, blue, and red layers beneath it. To make things fair, Trojan can't affect anything bigger than Moabs at this level, and it'll never target Bloons weaker than pinks. Now, this often makes you lose money, so if you're on an easy map where you don't need the help of Trojan, you can always put Ben behind an obstacle, as he needs to be able to see the Bloons to Trojan them. This way, you can still benefit from his extra income in biohack without losing money on Trojan. But there's two things to cover here. The first is that Trojan doesn't always put you in the red. Pops give you less and less money as the rounds go on, and Trojan earns more at level 16. So on screen is a list for when certain Bloons become profitable from Trojan. And the second is that in game modes that allow you to farm, you can easily make more money with Benjamin than you'll lose to Trojan. So if you're like me, just take the easier early game as Trojan counters round 40 and farm enough to where you don't notice the slight loss in money from pops. Moving on, Ben earns the siphon funding ability at level 10. This downgrades all incoming balloons by 1 layer, and downgraded balloons give double cash when popped. This is amazing for any tough rush. Just know that this doesn't affect DDTs until he's level 18, and it never affects bads or bosses. There are tons of times that this can make rounds super easy, but the ones that I use every time are rounds 63, 76, and 78. Aside from those, rounds 96 and 98 can be made much easier, as every blimp will be made 1 layer smaller. Now, the use of Ben changes depending on the game mode, so let's go through each of them. On standard game modes like easy and medium, you really don't have much to worry about. Just get a casual monkey or two, then work towards placing Ben. You can use his extra money to purchase more farms and snowball till the end, but these game modes are so short that you win before the farms start to take over. Is it still fun to get a ton of them before round 60? Yes, but let's be honest, it's more fun when you're going to rounds 80 or 100, so you might as well just get him down and laugh at how easy his Bloon Trojan makes round 40 and his extra income makes round 60. As for half cash and Apocalypse, I like to get him down as fast as possible. His end of round cash and skimming ability make these modes much more manageable, so even if it means I leak a bunch of lives, I get him down with as little money spent on defenses as possible. This can be brutal, but if you manage to get him down, his biohack ability is usually enough for your current defenses to last a few more rounds, and his money making skills will let you place more monkeys shortly thereafter. This isn't where his usefulness ends though. Round 40 is tough to say the least on half cash, but Bloon Trojan makes the Moab a thing of the past, letting you wait 10 rounds before having to worry about Moab popping power. Not to mention that most of the tough rounds can be countered with siphon funding. Apocalypse is even more hands off, as Ben usually won't hit level 10 in time to unlock siphon funding. So just let Ben's Trojan run wild and counter any of those Moabs that'll be coming in the 50s. On to hard and impoppable. This is where things get fun. We finally have the time we need to truly farm, and there aren't any special rounds or restrictions to make things hard on us. Obviously, we'll get him down early, but where do we go from here? Well, this is where I like to break out monkey banks. They make the most per round of any tier 3 farm, and it feels good using Ben's bank hack. You don't need to be in a rush to make these, as we'll have plenty of time to make money. What I normally do is get Ben down early, pop the round 40 Moab, and then place a farm or two. We'll upgrade both of them to banks in the mid 40s, which will give us a massive cash injection in about 8 rounds. From here, you can continue like a normal game, but with way more money than usual, or you can reinvest some of this money and place down more banks. So after we place some more down, we'll spend some money on defenses. The last thing we need is to lose to a tough round like 63 or 64. The downfall of every good farmer is greed, so try to spend some money defending. This will make the mid game easy, as well as set you up for way too many tier 5s at the end. And once we get to the final few rounds, I like to sell my banks for even more money. Completely unnecessary, but it's pretty fun to get down 3 or more tier 5 monkeys just to pop the bad. Shifting gears, we have boss events. While not as good as Geraldo for late game paragons, Benjamin makes boss farming easy and hands off. In these events, it's super important to get him as fast as possible. None of this getting defenses before him nonsense, as this will slow down the exponential growth of Banana Farm. Unfortunately, there aren't too many special tricks to do with Ben and bosses. Just get him down early and he'll accelerate your farm quite a bit. We'll use his biohack to beat the early rounds with barely any defenses and spend all of our money on farms. I would dive into the exact order, but the meta will change with time. Currently, the play is to get an early Monkeyopolis and surround it with marketplaces, but all it takes is one nerf or buff to change this strat completely. In the future, if you want to find out what the meta is, I'd look up boss event guides and pay attention to how they farm. But now, we're on to Ben's true purpose: co-op. We're all player 3s at heart, and Ben lets us do this the best. Gone are the days of splitting the money 4 ways because you get to keep his end of round cash. Does this make up for all the pop income that you'll be splitting? No, but he will help you place a few farms down, which will completely overtake whatever money you'd normally make in a solo game. Just remember, you could help out now and play some monkeys, or you can reinvest into even more farms so you can help out more later. The choice is yours. And finally, we have Chimps. This is the one game mode where I don't rush him at all. Instead, I get him whenever I have a spare $1,000, as I really only need him to hit level 10 by around 98. On top of this, I do make sure to put him behind an obstacle because this is the only time that we can't outfarm the money that we'll lose to Bloon Trojan. And if possible, I get him in a spot where he'll Trojan the Bloons that are pretty far into the map, but he won't help at all if we're destroying the round. From here, I just use Biohack anytime we need a boost in damage, and I only use Siphon Funding on round 98. This makes the round much easier, and because the game is almost over, we feel the loss of money much less. That being said, you better have enough defenses for rounds 99 and 100, because all you're getting from Ben is a Biohack from here on out. Moving on, we have Corvus, the best Chimps hero in the game. He costs $1,430, making him the second most expensive hero in BTD6, only after Churchill. So we'll need to get some defenses down first, like a ninja or submarine. The nice thing is that his early game is so strong that we can rush him from here. As soon as we get him down, he'll start smoking the rounds. His spirit has global range and solid popping power, making him one of the best early towers you can buy, especially if you're on a longer map. Similar to Geraldo, Corvus has a panel of actions you can take. Instead of using money to buy items though, you spend Corvus's mana to cast spells, so you get the benefit of having a spell for every occasion without the downside of having to spend money to bail you out. So he's extremely powerful at every stage of the game. The only downside is you have to learn what each spell does and when the best time to use them is. Because of this, it's hard to play Corvus at a high level, but even if you mess it up a bit, you can get a ton of power out of him. So let's go through his spells, abilities, and some common combos. We'll start with mana. Each spell he has costs mana to be cast, and Corvus has several ways of gathering mana. The first is passively generating it at a rate of 1 per second as long as the Bloons are still spawning, so you can't get infinite mana by stalling the rounds. The second is haunting balloons. When a Bloon passes through Corvus's range, he can haunt it, causing a green skeleton hand to wrap around the balloon. This strips purple and regrow properties and causes the balloon to take 1 extra damage from energy and plasma attacks. Each haunted balloon will explode upon dying, damages nearby balloons, and adds mana to Corvus's mana pool. Because of this, we want Corvus in the front lines and next to the track so he can always be haunting balloons. And the third way of getting mana is using his ability. Soul Harvest, his level 3, spawns a ghostly scythe to pop balloons near him. Corvus gets more mana the more layers are harvested, so I like to use it on ceramics as it makes the rushes easier and gives him a ton of mana. And his level 10 ability, Dark Ritual, makes a ring of flames appear around Corvus, damaging any balloon that passes through it, and he gets mana from them. This is best used during large rushes and can easily max out his mana pool several times over. So feel free to cast spells while this is active, as you can still end up at max mana even after spending a bunch. Now that we know how to get mana, we have his spells. The first and probably most important is Nourishment, the reason most people don't play Corvus. This spell converts his mana into experience, which is very nice as Corvus has a 1.425 times XP multiplier, but we really want him to hit level 20. So we'll be maxing out his mana pool and casting Nourishment as often as possible. To get more Nourishments off, you can stall the rounds, which will let you reach the level 20 power spike very early, or you can play normal and be able to reach level 20 on round 95 without stalling. It's up to you. On to the top row of spells. These 4 are toggleable, meaning the spells will stay on until you deactivate them or until Corvus runs out of mana. Each one of them has a startup mana cost and uses more mana on top of that every second they're on. The first spell here is Spear. It adds a forked lightning attack to Corvus's spear that lets it pop leads and take on large rushes. Its high pierce and decent damage smokes any round in the early game, just make sure not to use all his mana on it. Later on, it'll still do work, but when you're in the 90s, it won't solo around like it will in the 20s. The second toggleable spell is Aggression. This makes the spirit larger, turns it red, and makes it attack faster. At first, this sounds great as it can pair with other spells, but in the early game, you don't have the mana to be spamming them, and later on, Corvus's damage scales with the amount of mana he has. So it's often not recommended to use Aggression, as the small buff does not overcome the loss of mana and weakening of Corvus, so it's probably his worst spell. And the last of the toggleables are Malevolence and Storm. The first turns the spirit into a mist around Corvus that damages any balloons that pass through it. It's very good at cleaning up ceramics and below, and if you get Corvus to level 14, Malevolence will destroy the rushes on round 76 and 78. As for Storm, it makes the spirit shoot blades out constantly, which is good for breaking open blimps. Both of these spells contribute to Corvus's mid-game power spike and can be used to save up tons of money since he won't need much help beating the rounds. The next two spells we'll talk about are Repel and Frostbound. Both are great for slowing down the rounds and clumping the balloons, but they do it in different ways. Repel pushes any balloons back that touch the spirit, while Frostbound freezes any balloon that touches it. They're consistent at all times in the game, perfect for stalling Moabs, but they can struggle against ceramic. On to Echo, a spell that Corvus learns at level 3, and it's one of his best spells as it creates a clone of his spirit. The clone costs 300 mana, lasts 24 seconds, and any other spell you cast gets echoed as well. So if you echo and Storm, both spirits will be shooting forked lightning, an incredibly powerful spell that is a staple of his late game combos. At level 4, Corvus gets Soul Barrier and Trample. Soul Barrier provides a temporary shield that protects you from losing lives while active. The size of this shield depends on how much mana he has after casting it and caps out at 400 temp lives, but this even works in chimps. So if you have no way of stopping a balloon, cast this spell and you might be able to tank it. And the best part is that it can trigger life loss abilities like the Bomb Blitz, making it much more useful in chimps. As for Trample, it's similar to Sauda's Sword Charge. The spirit rushes backwards along the track, damaging any balloon it hits. And if you have the mana, you can combine it with Repel to hit blimps more than once. Next, we have Ember, one of my favorite spells. Casting this makes the spirit place walls of fire on the track that melt the balloons away. Similar to Spear, it destroys large rushes of balloons in the early and mid game. I like to cast this and Repel to keep the balloons in the fire longer, but you typically don't need this combo until the late game. Instead, you should save the mana spent on Repel and use it on Nourishment. But now we have Corvus's big two spells, Ancestral Might and Overload. The first transforms the spirit into a large red hand next to Corvus that smashes the strongest balloon in his range. This deals crazy single target damage at the expense of 550 mana, and the spirit doesn't have global range for the duration. But this attack smokes DDTs and will deal tons of damage to ZOMGs and the bad. Just make sure to combo it with Echo as you'll get two hands smashing away. As for Overload, casting it causes the spirit to explode on the spot and deal 1150 damage to nearby balloons. And this goes through blimp layers, so you can skip from ZOMGs down to nothing if done right. Just be careful as the spirit does disappear for 10 seconds after casting, as it has to reform from exploding. The most common uses for this are runs 96, 98, and 100, as you can cast Echo and Overload for a double explosion and take out every ZOMG of the round or even the bad layer. Just try to leave a few BFBs alive so Corvus has time to bring back the spirit before the next round starts. The only issue with Overload is that the spirits aren't always flying where you want the explosion to be. So a trick is to use Corvus's level 7 ability, Spirit Walk, to move him to where you want Overload to explode. Then cast Ancestral Might to bring the spirit right next to Corvus. And when the hands are about to expire, cast Overload. This forces the spirits to be right next to Corvus, causing a focused explosion. Not always needed, but it's a useful trick. And before we move on, Ancestral Might and Overload are the two reasons why getting level 20 on Corvus is so important. When he hits max level, he doesn't only get extra damage on his spirit, Ancestral Might and Overload get much better too. The hands go from dealing 150 damage per smack to 300, and Overload jumps up to dealing 2250 damage to up to 500 balloons. So really try to use Nourishment enough to max Corvus out. The final three spells we have are Vision, Recovery, and Haste. Vision gives Corvus camo detection for a short time. This is great in challenges where you're trying to spend as little money as possible, but in a normal game, it's not used as much as you should have a form of camo detection. Casting Recovery puts Corvus and his spirit in a meditative state where they don't attack, but it doubles the cooldown speed of every spell except Nourishment. So if you need to get a big one back early, like Overload, don't forget you can speed up the cooldown. And speaking of speeding up, we have Haste, a very cheap spell that increases the spirit's movement and turning speed. This is nice if the spirit has to travel far between tracks, or you can use it to speed up Trample and get your spirit back to attacking a little faster. That was every spell, but you won't always use them on their own. So here are the most common combos. When you're facing a large rush of blimps or balloons, cast Spear and Storm. Storm will break open the blimps fast, and Spear will make Corvus much better at popping the ceramics inside. If you're casting Repel or Frostbound, you can combo it with Ember so that the Bloons burn while the spirit stalls them. You can cast Echo and or Repel with Trample, as the second spirit and knockback help out its damage quite a bit. Ancestral Might benefits a ton from attack speed buffs, so make sure to give Corvus jungle drums, and if you want, you can overclock him anytime you cast this spell. And the obvious combo is to use Echo anytime you need more. I cast it just about every time I use Overload or Ancestral Might, as that extra damage is too nice to turn down. But as long as you get Corvus to level 20 in the 90s, you should have plenty of damage to get through the rest of the game. You can pair him with any damage dealer and support monkeys and you should be fine. He brings so much utility to the table, and the only downside is how much brain power you have to spend casting spells. He's the best Chimps hero, and tons of ridiculous records have been set with him. Next up, we have Ezili, the Witch Doctor. She's one of the cheapest heroes in the game, coming in at only $650, which means she is one of 3 heroes you can afford at the start of a Chimps game. This is nice as she levels up slowly, needing 1.425 times the normal XP to level up, but getting her down right away isn't always the best idea. She really struggles in the early game, especially if the Bloons are spaced out. So I typically get her after placing a couple early towers first, like a ninja or submarine. Then we'll put her in the front lines, as this will let her do what she does best. Her attacks deal tons of damage over time, especially at later levels, and she strips the camo, regrow, and fortified properties from Bloons starting at level 9. And we get the most out of all of these when she's near the front. Speaking of other towers, who should we combo her with? Well, the nice thing is we don't need to buff her with an Alchemist or Overclock. We can just let her attack on her own. In the mid game though, we'll need a ton of help with ceramic rushes. Whether you opt for boomerangs, dartlings, or snipers is up to you, but arguably the best combo with her is the Prince of Darkness, so pairing her with a necromancer in the 40s is definitely the way to go. Not only will his wall of fire and reanimated Bloons destroy most rushes, but Ezili increases the pierce of the reanimated Bloons by 50%, making it even easier for him. And at this time, Ezili will start doing great damage to Moabs as she gets a massive boost to them at level 6. Her real power though comes from when she hits level 10 and unlocks Moab Hex. This ability attacks a Moab class Bloon, dealing slightly over 4% of its health every second for 25 seconds. When this blimp is destroyed, it spawns no children, and if there is time left on the Hex, it'll jump to another blimp. This is crazy effective for taking out groups of ZOMGs and BFBs in the late game. We'll target them with Moab Hex and deal as much damage as possible while the ability is active. This will make the Hex jump to several blimps during its duration, causing there to be way less children Bloons that round. This is called Hex jumping and is the reason why Ezili is good. Now, Moab Hex follows Ezili's targeting, so you usually want to set her to strong so she hexes the ZOMGs. There are cases where first performs better, or even rounds where microing between the two is best, but for newer players or chill runs, strong is the way to go. Because of this, we'll want our late game towers to be something that can blow up Moab class Bloons, but normally struggles against the super ceramics inside. This could be a Carpet of Spikes, Plasma Accelerator, Tax Zone, or even the Dark Champion, as these will be able to shred ZOMGs and BFBs, and Moab Hex will take care of the rest. A cheeky combo you can do though is pair Ezili with a Permaspectry, as it'll save a ton of spikes not having to worry about the insides. The nice thing about saving up for these is Ezili can make for some very easy save up. Normally, you have to have your big tier 5 tower up and running for around 85, otherwise the 2 ZOMGs filled with super ceramics will blow right through you and make you start over. But because Ezili's Moab Hex can one-shot both of them, you can actually keep saving up until around 90. This can make for a comfortable mid game because you can spend extra money on defenses in the 50s and 60s knowing you'll have this extra time. Onto her 2 other abilities. Her first is Heartstopper. For 10 seconds, this prevents any Bloons from regrowing, and purple Bloons temporarily lose their purple immunity. This is handy for any round with purple Bloons, and I like to use it for round 76, as it makes a regrow farm impossible. Most games I get by without using it, but occasionally it's clutch. Her third ability is Sacrificial Totem, which she unlocks at level 7. When activated, she places down a totem that gives camo detection, extra pierce, range, attack speed, and projectile speed to every monkey in its range. And this buff is even bigger for wizards, making her combo with the Prince of Darkness even better. The downside of this is that it drains 10 lives with each use, so it can't be used in Impossible or Chimps runs. It's an excellent ability outside of these game modes though, as you can farm the lives back with druids or marketplaces, and you can use this life loss to trigger abilities like the Bomb Blitz's Explosion or the Elite Defender's 4x attack speed. Finally, Ezili can be used in the challenge editor as a cost-effective solution to take out the bad. This is only on expert maps where it costs under 20 grand to get her to max level, which allows her Moab Hex to target bads, making round 100 very easy. Not the most useful for getting black borders, but if you want to go for a cheap Chimps run, she's not a bad choice. Next up, we have Fusty. Like Ezili, he's relatively cheap, coming in at only $865, meaning you can get him down pretty early. This is super nice because he can help out a ton in the early game when he's set to strong. His main attack deals 3 damage to the bloon he slaps, and this creates a shockwave that deals 2 more damage to nearby bloons. So the initial one takes 5 total damage, which is enough to one-shot a ping. So I like to get him down right after my starting towers, that way he can help with tough rounds like 14 and 15. This timing also lets him hit some power levels pretty quickly. At level 3, he learns Rallying Roar, an ability that gives every monkey in his range +1 damage for a short time, and this can absolutely destroy hard rounds. Then, at levels 5 and 6, he gains the ability to slap bloons back towards the entrance and stun bloons with every hit. Both are incredibly useful for buying you time, especially once Moabs start coming. This makes him very strong against round 40, as his extra damage will let nearby monkeys tear it apart, and you might get lucky with a slap sending the Moab back along the track. The unfortunate thing is Pat does not level up fast. He's tied with Ezili, needing 1.425 times more experience than the base heroes, so he won't be hitting level 20 in CHIMPS games. Luckily for us, we get the most out of his power once he hits level 14, which he easily reaches even on beginner maps. The reason this level is so important is because it upgrades his Rallying Roar to provide +3 damage with a larger radius instead of +1, and the level before that, 13, lets Pat stun Moab class bloons with every hit. Now, we know Pat will provide us a ton of utility for a cheap price, but where should we place him? Well, we want him right next to the track because of his short range, and close to our main damage dealers because Rallying Roar doesn't reach that far. And I like to set him to strong so that he stuns ZMGs and BFBs heading your way. However, if he's behind your main source of damage, you can keep him on first so that he cleans up the Moabs and ceramics that get by. As for who to pair him with, his Roar combos well with high attack speed towers that shoot tons of projectiles. So pair Pat with a Taxone, Grandmaster Ninja, or Sun avatars to get the most out of him. And his stuns pair nicely with other stalling towers like Relentless Glues and Moab Presses. What's nice though is that we don't need to buff Pat with anything. Obviously, still put him in range of a village, but you don't need to spend the money on something like an alchemist. You can just enjoy his utility for the cheap $865. If you do have extra money though, giving him a stronger stim and overclock makes him attack super fast. This will let Pat perma-stun just about every round, with Pierce being his only limitation. This does require a map that only has one track, but even on a map like Blondes, it can be very effective. But there's one thing we haven't talked about yet: his level 10 ability, Big Squeeze. When activated, he squeezes the strongest non-batter boss bloon in his range and completely destroys the outer layer. Then, the children bloons inside become stunned for 2 seconds. The downside is that he doesn't attack during the squeeze, so you miss out on all the stuns and slapbacks that he'd normally provide. Because of this, it's usually better to not use Big Squeeze unless there's only one blimp left on the round. So feel free to use it on round 60 and 80, or the end of rounds 85, 87, and 97. Moving on, we have Adora. She comes in at $1,080, making her one of the more expensive heroes in the game. This can make it tough to get her down early, but after a few starting towers, you can normally get her in the mid to late teens. The problem is that she's tied with Churchill for the slowest leveler in the game, requiring 1.71 times more experience than the base heroes. Her level 7 ability helps with this, as it lets us sacrifice a tower in return for experience, but more on that in a bit. Even with this slow leveling, Adora has a strong early game. Her high Pierce, ability to shoot over walls, and homing projectiles help out a ton on the battlefield. Then, at level 3, she learns Long Arm of Light, an ability that lets her pop purples and doubles her Pierce and range for 10 seconds. If you're facing an early rush, this ability will counter it. And at level 4, she gets a second Divine Bolt, doubling her DPS. This is the time you should pair her with a Berserker Brew, as it'll make her main attack much better, and she gets more and more bolts with time. But this brings us to the mid game, where Adora struggles. Her main attack doesn't keep up with the rounds, so she relies on her level 10 ability, Ball of Light. It deals great global damage, but even this falls off in the 70s. Because of that, we need a tower or two that will carry us through round 80. Some good choices are a Comanche Defense, Velociraptor, Bads, Spiked Mines, Aircraft Carrier, Full Auto Sniper, or even a 025 Elite Defender. What's nice is we can spend way more on mid-game monkeys than usual, because we need to sacrifice a good amount to get Adora to max level. So with these extra mid-game monkeys, we should easily be able to save up for a late-game tower. The ones that work best with her are those you can afford in the late 70s or early 80s, have good single target damage, struggle against DDTs around 98, or just need a little more DPS to beat the round. Some notable ones are the T-Rex, Glaive Lord, and Sky Shredder. I personally like the Glaive Lord the most because you can use a more glaives to help with round 63 and it'll handle every purple for the entire run. But now we have two goals. Get Adora to level 20 and buy her some support. The first is very easy, as we'll start to use her blood sacrifice ability we talked about earlier. This gets rid of the selected tower and converts it into experience for Adora. This is a great ratio as she gets 4 times the value of the sacrifice tower. So if you sacrifice something worth 5 grand, she'll get 20,000 XP. Because of this, Adora is better on harder maps because the higher the difficulty, the less you'll have to spend on sacrifices to max her out, as she'll get more from the rounds. If you're on an advanced or expert map, you'll only need to sacrifice 25 grand or less to get her to level 20. But we have a couple fun tricks to do while sacrificing. The first is to use beast handlers as your mid-game carry. This is because blood sacrifice gives Adora extra attack speed and range for 10 seconds on top of the XP. And with beast handlers, you sack them one at a time so you get a longer buff duration than if you sacrificed one large tower. And the second trick is to use discount villages in the mid game. Normally, you have to place a bunch of towers in their range to make the villages worth it, but that's not the case with Adora. Get 2 or 3 of them down to save money on monkeys that you don't plan on sacking, and when you're done, you can sacrifice the villages to get her closer to level 20. You have to sacrifice this money anyway, so you might as well get some extra value out of it. Now, we've made a big deal about maxing out Adora, and here's why. On top of her just getting stronger with each level, her sacrifice buff gets reworked at 20. Instead of offering experience, the buff now lasts 1 minute and can give up to double attack speed and plus 50% range, and her Ball of Light ability gets significantly better too, dealing 4 times damage. This gives her a crazy amount of popping power, letting her become your main damage dealer in the late 90s. So try to get Adora to level 20 between rounds 94 and 98. Getting it before this is a waste of money, as your tier 5 tower should be able to handle the rounds up to this point, but once she is level 20, start sacrificing towers worth 4k or more to get the max buff. I like to sacrifice a 010 super monkey anytime the buff wears off, but you do you. In the late 90s, Adora will be doing tons of damage, especially if you use her abilities correctly. Keep the sacrifice buff whenever you need Adora to pop balloons, and alternate between using Long Arm of Light and Ball of Light. Both of these add a ton of damage, so it's nice to always have one off cooldown. And that just leaves us with support monkeys to get. The main one is an overclock, as this brings Adora's DPS to a whole other level. Combine this with a sacrifice and the balloons won't stand a chance. Other nice supports are a Relentless Glue, Moab Presses, and a Sabotage Ninja. This guy's ability is one of the best in the game, as it slows the scream, and it's even better with Adora. Once you use his ability for the last time, on round 98 or 99, you can sacrifice him as he is over the 4k threshold, and that just leaves us with round 100. Adora does have low single target damage, so we'll need some help with the bad. 2 easy options are Spike Storms and a First Strike, as these can break the outer layer quickly and our other monkeys can handle the insides. Next, we have non-chimps runs such as Impoppable. The only real difference is that we'll farm with a few banks or marketplaces in the mid game. This will provide more than enough money to get our defenses down, and we can power level Adora up to 20 early. Then, instead of sacrificing supers, we can sack marketplaces, as they'll generate some money for us while we wait to use them. Finally, we have Freeplay, one of Adora's strongest game modes. The reason she's so good in Freeplay is because her sacrifice buff affects every top path super monkey, meaning she gives extra attack speed and range to sun avatars, temples, and the VTSG, meaning you can give several of your strongest monkeys even more popping power. This is a crazy buff to have, letting people get to the 600s on logs. This buff is also commonly used to pair Adora with sun avatars on chimps. While cool, it's not as good as what we talked about earlier, but the best part about Freeplay is building a true sun god in the range of a level 20 Adora. This transforms her into the true sun goddess. She'll float in the air, change appearances, and get some crazy buffs. I'm talking plus 8 damage and 30 pierce for her main attack, and gives her Ball of Light plus 80 damage and 35 pierce. Combine this with the fact she's shooting 8 divine bolts at a time, and it adds up quickly. But with a screen full of paragons, sun temples, and a VTSG, it can get a bit lost. So the most important thing to do with her is to constantly have the blood sacrifice buff active. Coming in hot, we have Sai. They're tied with Adora, costing $1,080, and they instantly make an impact. Sai has global range, ignores obstacles, and is capable of one-shotting up to rainbow balloons at level 1. I like to set them to strong, as it makes the early rounds much easier. One thing to note is that while they do have global range, Sai still needs a good spot near the track. This is because their level 3 ability, Psychic Blast, stuns nearby balloons for a long time. This is very good at clumping them up, and it gets more pulses later on. Additionally, Sai helps out with early camos and lead. While not enough to completely solo them, you don't have to worry about the around 24 camo green, and the leads in the late 30s are much easier to deal with. The only downside is Sai is one of the slowest levelers in the game, needing 1.5 times the normal amount to level up, and the later levels are very important for Sai to be useful in the late game, meaning they're much better on advanced and expert maps similar to Adora. Luckily, Sai will hit level 7 by round 40, which gives them the ability to one-shot ceramics, and Psychic Blast now pulses 2 times. While Sai can't damage the Moab, their stun can slow it down quite a bit, giving your other monkeys plenty of time to break it open. And once the outer layer is popped, Sai will one-shot 3 of the 4 ceramics inside. So pair Sai with something that can pop the outer layer, like a Destroyer, Mauler, or Bionic Boomer, and use their stun to stall the blimp. But that brings us to the mid game. Unfortunately, Sai won't be able to help with mobs for a while, but they will pop a surprising amount of ceramics every round, making them much easier to deal with. Around round 60, Sai will hit level 10 and unlock Psionic Scream. Using this causes up to 2,000 affected Bloons to have a 50-50 chance of either getting blown backwards towards the start or getting insta-killed. This is a very strong ability, and I like to use it whenever I'm about to leak, as it's guaranteed to either pop the leaking balloons or buy you more time. So when it comes to large rushes, Sai's abilities should be enough to get by. For example, you can beat round 63 by stunning the first wave, using Psionic Scream on the second, and stun will be back off cooldown for the third. And you can scream round 76 and both rushes of 78. Just be careful with abilities going forward, because Sai makes it so you can't stall the end of rounds to get everything off cooldown. This is especially the case when Sai hits levels 14 and 16, as that lets them pop up to Moabs and then BFBs. These are huge power spikes that make them heavily reduce the RBE in the late game. And Psionic Scream only affects Bloons that Sai can pop, so it becomes very powerful as well, particularly against the late 90s. Even without using abilities though, Sai will start taking out a ton of blimps each round. The sad thing is, Sai can't pop DDTs or ZOMGs until they're level 20, which won't happen unless you pair them with an Energizer. This means the best towers to pair with Sai are those that can break open the DDT and ZOMG layers so that Sai can help out. Some of the most common monkeys to pair with them are the Permacharge, Cripple Moab, Moab Eliminator, or even a Perma Spike. That being said, Sai is actually pretty helpful versus DDTs. They rely mostly on their speed, and Sai's stun stops them in their tracks. And at this point in the game, it has 3 pulses, giving your other monkeys plenty of time to pop them. But that brings us to level 100, where Sai can't help it all until the bad layer is broken. Because of this, using a First Strike or Spike Storms to bust it open early are great, or you can rely on your tier 5 to do a ton of damage to the outer layer. Once it's just ZOMGs and DDTs, use Sai Stun to buy you more time, and Psionic Scream once they've broken down to BFBs. And this should be more than enough to beat round 100. And finally, we have Geraldo, the shopkeeper. He's pretty cheap, costing only $810, and he levels up as fast as the base heroes, meaning he'll hit level 20 in just about every game of Chimps. Unlike other heroes though, Geraldo doesn't have any abilities. Instead, he has a shop full of items that you can buy and use. As he levels up, we get access to more items, or some that we could already buy get better. And this makes him an incredibly strong hero. His items can bail you out of basically every round. You just have to make sure not to overspend on his items. His first item is the Shooty Turret. These guys cost $270 and are a great early game tower. They have much more pierce than a sub or dart monkey and deal 2 damage, letting them destroy tough rounds like 15. Just make sure to put them on a straight line to get the most out of their 10 pierce. They do fall off in the 30s though, so try to only place 1 to 3 of them down if you can. The nice thing is that they take up almost no space. They have a tiny footprint, so you can place them in the smallest of places. Then at level 13, Geraldo will start selling upgraded turrets that deal 5 damage a pop. These are a great value, and you can just stockpile them near the back of the track and use them for super ceramic cleanup in the late game. Next, we have Geraldo's nails. These are great for picking up small leaks like a single blue or red balloon, but you shouldn't rely on them. If you use them all the time, they'll be a waste of money, but they can be a nice bridge if you're close to buying a more expensive monkey. I like to put one at the back of the track just in case, as they'll never time out. And this way, we can completely ignore the round 24 camo balloon, as it'll only use up 3 of the 10 nails in the pile. In the late game, Geraldo upgrades them to nail mines that do a surprising amount of damage. So if you want, you can start putting them at the back of the track too, as a few of them can even take out a DDT. The third item is Jerry's Creepy Idol. They knock back every 4th bloon that enters their range, and with levels, they start stunning blimps. This can be useful at all stages of the game, but is particularly good on tough mid-game rounds like 63, or at the end when you're getting swarmed with ZOMGs and BFBs. They only last 2 rounds, so I like to place as many as I can on round 98 to help with it and the fortified DDTs of 99. And the last item Geraldo has at level 1 is his Jar of Pickles. You give the jar to a monkey, and for 5 rounds, it'll get +1 damage, but attack 25% slower. This is amazing in in the early game as it'll almost double the damage of towers like a dart monkey or submarine, but once towers start dealing more damage, it gets worse. Try to only use it on monkeys that deal 1 or 2 damage, and preferably those that have high pierce and or attack speed. This could be tack shooters, sun avatars, or even a Comanche commander. But remember, monkeys like alchemists and embrittlements give extra damage, so it's pretty easy even for a weak tower to be dealing 4 or more damage in the late game. One nice trick is that if you place Pickles on Geraldo, all of his turrets will get the buff as well, which is very nice in the early game. This goes for any monkey that has sub towers, like the engineer if it's placing sentries. And at level 16, Pickles will also give +1 damage to fortified balloons, which is great for the 90s. At level 3, Jerry unlocks a camo potion. This gives affected monkeys camo detection for 5 rounds, letting you delay a radar scanner or submergence support for a while. I like to use this on my biggest tower on round 33, as it can pop every camo balloon in the 30s if you're on an easy enough map. Combine this with the road spikes in round 24, and you won't need a decamoer until the 40s, letting you spend much more preparing for the round 40 Moab. And at level 14, the camo pot lasts 10 rounds, grants extra range, and gives +1 damage to camo balloons, which is especially nice for DDTs. I like to put this on my main damage dealers on round 91, as it lasts the rest of the game and just makes my defenses better. Next, we have his bottle of glue. Unlocked at level 4, this tube can be placed on the track and it slows any balloon that passes over it. This is amazing in the early and mid game, as for just $160, you can make any tough round much easier. I like to use it on round 15 as the pinks can be tough to deal with otherwise, or on round 20 as one tube can glue rounds 20 through 23. The best part is that the glue soaks through every layer, so gluing strong balloons like rainbows or ceramics goes a long way. Another nice round for the bottle of glue is 63. Here, you can use 2 of them to glue most of the ceramics, giving you more time to pop them. Or if you're on a map with multiple tracks, you can glue 1 of them to offset the ceramic rushes, so your monkeys only have to deal with half the ceramics at a time. The only downside is that it falls off in the late game. Even with the glue being able to affect blimps once Jerry is level 17, it just doesn't have enough pierce for the 90s. You can still use it to slow down ZOMGs or DDTs, but other items are better at this stage of the game. At level 5, Jerry gets sharpening stones in stock. They give +1 pierce to a monkey, but can only be applied to those that deal sharp type damage. The monkeys that can pop leads or frozen balloons. I don't use this too often, but it can be nice for something like a tack zone or elite sniper. Plus, it lasts 10 rounds, which is actually a pretty long time. At level 15, this buff gets bumped up to +2 pierce, but that's not the biggest deal most of the time. I typically only use it on round 91, where I give it to as many monkeys as possible since it'll last the rest of the game. Onto the Worn Hero's Cape. Unlocked at level 6, this cape can be given to a tier 2 or lower dart monkey, and it'll transform into a super monkey. This new super is capped at tier 3 upgrades, but that's more than enough. At first, it seems like this just gives a slight discount to super monkeys, but it actually saves a ton of space too. Darts are much smaller than supers, so a common strategy is to place a few dart monkeys down, surround them with support monkeys in discount villages, and give them all capes. This way, we can fit way more super monkeys in discount range and let you easily fit alchemists or other support monkeys in there too. I love getting a triple discount setup and making 4 or 5 robo monkeys for cheap. And while you're doing this, you can give the base super monkeys pickles, as it almost doubles their DPS, which can be a huge swing in popping power in the 40s or 50s. On to Jerry's Blade Trap. This item lets you place a maelstrom on the track that spews out blades when a balloon passes over it. This shreds just about any rush, but costs a whopping $700. This doesn't sound like much for beating around, but if you use them all the time, you'll be blowing thousands of dollars when you could have beat them with something cheaper like a couple bottles of glue. That being said, the most common way to use this early is on round 40, where you can place it on the Moab when it's about to break open, and the maelstrom will pop all the ceramics inside. And if you're on an expert map with very little track, you can pair it with a bottle of glue to give you more time to pop the ceramics before they leave. The other times to use the blade trap are rounds 96 or 98. You see, once Geraldo hits level 15, the traps upgrade to super maelstroms, shooting off more blades, dealing twice the damage, and having more pierce. These are great when the screen is full of BFBs and Moabs, as a couple traps can deal thousands of damage in a single round. And this late in the game, you're not too worried about spending a couple $1,000s. Just make sure to place them offensively and not at the back of the track, as you won't get the most out of their pierce if you put them near the exit. At level 8, Jerry gets one of my favorite items, his world famous hot sauce. Place one of these bottles on a monkey and they get a fire spirit for 5 rounds. These spirits are basically dragon's breaths, as they fire a stream of flames at the balloons. This adds a ton of damage, but does cost $700, so try to only use it when you're close to your next big upgrade. I'm talking when you're in the 40s and close to your mid-game carry, or in the late 70s / early 80s when you're a couple grand off a tier 5 tower. What's fun about these guys though is they inherit the buffs of the monkeys you put them on. So if you place Jerry's hot sauce on Shinobi ninjas or Populus druids, Broods, they'll get a ton of extra attack speed and pierce, making them insanely strong, and their $700 price tag becomes a steal. In fact, they get so strong that fire spirits on shinobis with a Grand Saboteur can beat even the hardest expert maps. Now, at level 16, these spirits deal more damage over time, but more importantly, last 10 rounds instead of 5. So on round 91, I like to place as many as I can as they'll last the rest of the game. And before we move on, the spirits benefit a ton from a jar of pickles, as they'll get almost twice as strong. So try to put the spirits on monkeys that also benefit from pickles. Level 10 blesses Geraldo with one of the best items in the game, pet rabbits. Each one costs a whopping $2,160 and does absolutely nothing but look cute, until you get the fourth one down, where Hopsy, Flopsy, Button, and Dave will combine into a killer rabbit that does solid damage in the mid and late game. And it has a ton of range, attacking up to 80 units away from its current spot. And it won't get stuck, because if it doesn't see any Bloons for a bit, the bunny will teleport back to Geraldo and wait for Bloons to enter its range again. Something to know is that its damage scales with the rounds. The more RBE on screen, the more damage it does, just like the Avatar of Wrath. I try to get the rabbit down as early as possible, as it smokes the ceramics in the mid game. Ideally, we'll get the fourth one down by around 63, but you won't always have the money or experience to get this done in time. Then, at level 11, Jerry unlocks the Rejuvenation Potion. This costs $21.60 as well, but heals 50 lives and makes every ability come off cooldown. Now, we can't make lives in chimps, but ability-based strategies are some of the strongest in the game. Unfortunately, newer players tend to stay away from them because you have to be careful when you activate abilities, as if they're on cooldown at the wrong time, it's an auto loss. But the Rejuve Potion makes that a non-issue. Just use your abilities when the Bloons start to get far and try to stall the rounds until your abilities are back. But if you need to use them again before that happens, buy a potion. Now, you can't just spam away, as there are only 2 in stock and they're expensive, but it does make the Total Transformation, PMFC, Zarbomba, and Tech Terror strats much better. In other runs, you might need to use a specific ability twice in one round, and it can save quite a bit of money buying this potion instead of a second tower. 2 examples of this are a Sabotage Ninja on round 95 or a First Strike for round 100. The 30 DDTs on 95 lasts longer than a single Sabotage, so instead of spending 8 grand on a second Sabo, you can just use a Rejuve Potion to slow the Bloons again once it wears off and beat the round. And for round 100, if you have a First Strike, you can use it, buy a Rejuve Potion, First Strike again, buy another potion, and First Strike a third time, which will break open the bad layer and is much less expensive than buying a second First Strike submarine. And the last item we'll cover is the Genie. Unlocked at level 12, the Genie has a ton of near global damage, but it only lasts 2 rounds and costs $2,700, so be very careful when you use this. There can only be 2 in stock at a time, and Geraldo restocks 1 every 5 rounds. So what I like to do is place 1 on round 94 to help me with that and round 95. Then I'll place 1 on round 98, as it's the toughest round in the game, and because it's been 5 rounds, 1 will come back in stock for 99, letting us place it to double up against the fortified DDTs and have 1 left over for the round 100 bad. These 3 genies will cost $8,100, but will make so much money in these rounds that shouldn't be a problem. Outside of the 90s, you should really only genie in the early 80s when making the last bit of a big save up, but even here, there should be a cheaper option. Now that we've covered every item, here are a few more tips. The majority of Geraldo's items are used to beat specific rounds you'd otherwise have to spend much more money on a tower to beat. These items can pass just about any round in the mid game, but spamming them can get expensive and hurt save ups. Typically, you want to spend very little in the early game, only a few hundred on turrets, nails, pickles, and glue. Then in the mid game, spend almost nothing outside of the killer rabbits. This bunny costs over 8 grand, but is a mid game carry, letting you get to the 80s much easier, where you'll be able to pick up a late game tower. And in the 90s, spend away. Many of his items deal way more damage or support more than other options at this point in the game, so feel free to place as many as you can. But there's one more thing that'll happen around this time. Geraldo will hit level 20, and here his entire shop restocks. So when Geraldo is level 19 and a round away from hitting 20, buy as many items as you want. I like to empty out the fire spirits and camo pots, but everything is on the table. A fun one is to buy a bunch of creepy idols, as you can get 8 of them down, permastalling everything until they time out. And if you're feeling really ambitious, you can look up when to place Geraldo so he hits level 20 on a specific round. That way, you get his restock when you need it most. But that was how to properly use every hero in BTD6. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone in my Discord for helping me out, with specific thanks to Doreo, Krulas, Chom, Vex, Vlip, Master Knight, Hello There, Birdz, and Qianye.